Narmer, also known as Menes in later tradition, stands as one of the most significant figures in ancient Egyptian history, but also one of the most forgotten when we consider the names that usually dominate the sphere. Hi, welcome to 5 Minutes of History, the weekly series where patrons get to choose their own video topics. This one is courtesy of Captain JB. Thank you for your support. Who was Narmer? Credited with the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt around 3100 BC, Narmer's reign marks the beginning of the early dynastic period and the First Dynasty. Though much of his life remains shrouded in mystery, as does most history from this far back in time, it is through archaeological evidence, especially the famed Narmer pallet, that we begin to see a portrait of a ruler who would lay the foundations for one of history's most enduring and alluring civilizations that has fascinated scholars for millenniums. Not just centuries, millenniums. Before Narmer, Egypt was divided into two regions, Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north. This is a bit back to front when we look at it from the north-south perspective of the modern day, but just remember it is lower in altitude and closer to the sea when referencing the Nile, and you'll be golden. Each region has its own rulers, cultures, and deities at the time. The unification of these lands into a single kingdom was not only a political achievement, but also very symbolic that would shape Egyptian ideology well even into the modern day. Because when people start to look at Egypt from this time on, following this event, be it the Romans, the Sassanids, the Caliphates, or the Europeans, it's just one Egypt. It's not ruling over Upper and Lower, it's one Egypt. The process of unification itself is very hazy, but it likely involved a series of alliances and cultural integrations, along with some conflicts. While earlier rulers may have taken steps towards consolidation, it was Narmer who was most widely recognised as the pharaoh who completed the task. His rule ushered in the first dynasty of Egypt, and with it the beginnings of centralized statehood, administration, and formal religious structures. But how do we know this, given, it's quite literally 5,000 years ago? Well, the most iconic piece of evidence that we have of Narmer's reign is the Narmer pallet, discovered in the late 19th century at the Temple of Heracleopolis, a major city in Upper Egypt, by James E. Quibble. This ceremonial stone pallet carved from siltstone provides both artistic and historical insights into Narmer's time. It's a large 60cm tall artifact, and it was likely created with the idea specifically of prestige in mind. On one side of the pallet, the pharaoh is depicted wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt, smiting a kneeling enemy with a mace. Now, this is a very common depiction in ancient Egypt, and it symbolizes royal power through military conquest. A falcon representing the god Horus is also present, perching just above the smote enemy, and this signifies that the pharaoh has divine favour. On the reverse, Narmer is shown wearing the red crown of Lower Egypt, inspecting rows of decapitated enemies with the intertwining of two stylized animal necks in the centre, and this is interpreted as representing unity between Upper and Lower Egypt. These two depictions together indicate that Narmer was somebody who ruled over both kingdoms, and the lack of evidence presenting anyone else ruling over the kingdoms prior to Narmer indicate that he was likely the first one to do so. Naturally, scholars continue to debate whether Narmer's unification of Egypt was achieved through military conquest or more peaceful means. The Narmer pallet certainly suggests a violent takeover, yet there is also evidence of gradual cultural assimilation and trade between Upper and Lower Egypt prior to his rule. Some argue that Narmer may have secured power in Lower Egypt through alliances or dynastic marriages rather than outright warfare, but perhaps it was a combination of both, not unlike other unifications in history such as Alfred the Great and his dynasty and the birth of England. Odds are, given the depictions, there was probably some violence. It also is possible that Narmer's rule was more symbolic than absolute in the early years, with local chieftains retaining some local autonomy. Kind of like the Roman client king system in the late Republic, local rulers still rule over their local areas, but they are subservient to a larger entity. Over time, what can't be denied though is that his successors would consolidate this unity, reinforcing central authority of the pharaoh and developing the administrative and religious infrastructure necessary to govern the newly unified kingdom. Narmer himself likely established the city of Memphis, a strategically located city on the border of Upper and Lower Egypt, as the new capital. This site allowed control over both the agricultural wealth of the Delta, the political heartland of Upper Egypt, while being closer enough to Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt at the same time to stop any rebellion. And this city would go on to play a central role in Egyptian history for centuries, right up until the foundation of Alexander under the Ptolemies. Along with this new capital, the early forms of hieroglyphs found on pottery and seals generally date from this period, and that represents the genesis of one of the world's longest lasting writing systems. Also, by promoting a unified religious and political entity, Narmer helped lay the foundations of the Egyptian state, and would become crucial in maintaining the stability of the Egyptian monarchy for generations to come. While Narmer's reign is considered the starting point of dynastic Egypt, some historians argue that he may be the same person as Menes, or he may not be, and this is where things get a little complicated because Menes himself is a semi-mythical figure mentioned in later king lists and by classical authors. But, and there is a key but, there is some confusion here, and we won't really know unless we find more evidence, because all early Egyptian records often use different names for the same person. Again, to use a Roman example, think Augustus and Octavian being the same person. One's a title, one's a name. Good luck figuring out which one is which, considering how long ago this was. Regardless, though, of whether Narmer and Menes are the same individual, what can be agreed upon is their legacy of a unified kingdom, and the fact that it existed for thousands and thousands of years. Successive pharaohs would adopt similar iconography and ideological motifs. The dual crown would stick around, combining the white and red crowns into this word, which became the lasting symbol of authority in Egypt. Narmer's success set a precedent for the rule of all future kings of Egypt too, the centralized state, divine kingship, religious integration, and cultural unity that he initiated formed the bedrock of the ancient Egyptian civilization that we know and study today. Thank you for joining me, and I've already gone over my 5-minute limit for this series, but hey, it is what it is, 5-ish minutes. I will see you all next week for more from another Patreon chosen topic.